The inner conflict. Why your spirit is under attack every day. Introduction. There is a war that rarely makes noise, a battle that almost never draws the attention of headlines or alarms, and yet it decides the shape of your days and the weight of your nights. It is the war within, the constant pull between what you know is right and what feels easy, between the higher call of your spirit and the immediate cravings of your flesh. Every morning, you wake up into a world of notifications, deadlines, opinions, and invisible pressures that try to convince you that life is only what you can touch, purchase, compare, and consume. But deep inside, there is another life, quieter, deeper, truer, that refuses to be reduced to the surface. That inner life is where your spirit lives, and that is precisely why the attack is relentless. Because if your spirit wakes up and leads, everything else changes. Fear loses its throne, anxiety loses its language, habit loses its chains, temptation loses its shine. That is why the attack never stops. Dull the spirit and the rest of you drifts. Awaken the spirit and the rest of you bows. Most of us have felt that duality in the simplest places. You know you should speak with honesty, but your mouth shapes an acceptable half-truth. You know your heart needs silence, but your hand reaches for the glowing screen again and again, like a reflex. You know your life calls for discipline, but your body bargains for comfort. You know your mind requires renewal, but your habits recycle the same stale inputs, hoping for a different output. What you are noticing in those moments is not merely a personality quirk, it is the constant contest of allegiances. The flesh is not only a body, it is a bent of being, a gravitational pull toward the immediate, the impulsive, the unexamined. The spirit is not merely your best mood, it is a God-breathed compass, a living hunger for what is eternally good, beautiful, and true. When these two meet in the arena of your ordinary choices, sparks fly even if no one hears them, and you, right now, are in that arena. The danger is not that the attack is loud. The danger is that it is subtle. It rarely announces itself as malice. It appears as a small compromise, a necessary shortcut, an innocent delay, a reasonable exception, a well-deserved indulgence. One moment at a time, it blunts the sharp edge of conviction. One distraction at a time, it drains the attention that your spirit needs to breathe. One rationalization at a time, it hollows out your reverence for what is holy, until reverence feels extreme and compromise feels wise. Your adversary in this fight is not only temptation, but spiritual anesthesia. The goal of the attack is not merely to make you do something wrong, it is to make you forget that you are made for something higher. But here is the hope: you are not powerless. The conflict is not evidence that you are broken beyond repair. It is evidence that your spirit is alive enough to protest being domesticated. The war within is proof of life. If you feel the tension, you are not hopeless. You are being invited into growth. The habits that once held you can be unlearned. The convictions that have gone quiet can be amplified. The disciplines that once felt foreign can become second nature. Your spirit can lead your body, your mind, and your emotions, not by violence but by steady, surrendered authority. What follows is not a list of slogans, but a field guide for the daily front lines: how the attack works, how it hides, and how you overcome. Read slowly, return often. Let these words become a mirror, a map, and a mandate for the days ahead. The anatomy of the daily attack, how the flesh wins before you notice. The conflict rarely begins where you think it does. By the time your desire is inflamed, your resolve is already exhausted. By the time the shortcut seems irresistible, your sense of direction is already compromised. The flesh wins by setting terms before the spirit has even entered the conversation. It capitalizes on three openings: fatigue, focus, and framing. Fatigue dulls discernment, focus directs desire, and framing defines meaning. If any one of these favors the flesh, the battle becomes an uphill climb. If all three tilt in the same direction, defeat feels inevitable and even reasonable. Fatigue is the enemy's favorite door because it never needs to argue, it only needs to wait. Wear a person down enough, and they will trade long-term alignment for short-term relief. Fatigue is not only physical, it is cognitive and moral. Cognitive fatigue is the exhaustion of decision-making, too many choices without clear priorities. Moral fatigue is the exhaustion of conviction, too many small compromises until your standards feel like a burden instead of a protection. The attack leverages both. It invites you to live by reaction instead of intention, by impulse instead of principle. Consider your mornings. If you wake and immediately bathe your attention in noise, you begin the day surrendered. Your spirit needs first speech, but the flesh wins when the first voice you hear is the algorithms. If the first minutes of your day are claimed by the urgent and the trivial, your inner compass starts spinning, and the rest of the day is spent in recovery mode. Focus determines what desires grow. You are not a slave to every craving. You are a gardener of attention. What you water grows. What you neglect withers. The daily attack knows this and therefore wages war at the level of what you repeatedly look at, rehearse, and let circulate within you. The flesh does not need to introduce a new desire if it can amplify an old one. It does so by building an environment that rewards the immediate and penalizes the eternal. If your constant inputs are comparison, performance, scarcity, sensationalism, and outrage, your nervous system will calibrate to crisis even when you're safe, and your choices will reflect that agitation. The attack hides in the feed, in the noise around the edges, in the just-for-a-second checks that fracture your attention into 1,000 pieces too small to build anything meaningful. Soon, the good you want to do feels impossible, not because it is complex, but because you have no unbroken hour to attempt it. Framing answers the question, what does this mean? If the flesh can control the frame, it can disguise a detour as a destination. Notice how subtle that can be. You tell yourself that rest means numbing, that love means control, that honesty means cruelty, that freedom means absence of boundaries. With a corrupted frame, virtues are counterfeited and vices are rebranded. The attack shapes the story you tell yourself about your behavior. If the story is seductive enough, your conscience goes quiet, not because it agrees, but because it is drowned out. This is why two people can perform the same action with different outcomes. One with a clear frame of worship, the other with a hazy frame of self-soothing. And the spiritual impact is not the same. The flesh wages war not only on what you do, but on why you do it. It lives in the fog of rationalization, where you label selfishness as self-care, avoidance as peace, procrastination as patience, and passivity as surrender. How, then, do you interrupt this sequence before it hardens into habit? Begin by reclaiming your first and last moments. The bookends of the day set the story of the day. If you consecrate your mornings to attention, sacred words before screens, stillness before schedules, you signal to your whole being who is in charge. You are not making a religious gesture. You are protecting your focus from being auctioned to the highest bidder. In the evening, you close the gates. You audit the inputs. You confess the small compromises without making them your identity. You name the mercies that interrupted your worst impulses. And you lay down the day as a finished chapter. This is not perfectionism. It is stewardship of attention. A life is the sum of what it repeatedly attends to. Next, train your body to follow your spirit through small, non-negotiable acts. The flesh hates pre-decided obedience because it thrives on negotiation. When you decide in advance that certain practices are non-optional, prayer even when unfelt, gratitude even when unseen, study even when inconvenient, generosity even when uncelebrated, you remove the debate that drains energy. The point is not to earn worth, but to train alignment. Your body is not your enemy, it is your apprentice. When you fast from anything that has too loud a say over your emotions, food, entertainment, social media, you are not punishing yourself. You are reminding your body that it does not get the final word. Each abstention is a rehearsal. I am led by something higher than appetite. Over time, this quiets the inner courtroom where the flesh cross-examines every conviction. Then, repair your frame with truth strong enough to hold weight. The attack exploits slogans. The spirit is nourished by sentences that can bear reality. Write the truths you keep forgetting and place them where you cannot avoid them. I am not my urges. I am not my worst day. I am not my best performance. I am not what strangers think. I am not what fear predicts. I am what I love most. And I will teach my loves to love what is eternal. When the moment of temptation arrives, you will not have time to improvise a theology. You will reach for whatever you have already planted. If you have planted only entertainment, you will harvest distraction. If you have planted only opinions, you will harvest argument. If you have planted truth, you will harvest sanity. Do not underestimate the role of community in this anatomy. The flesh always argues for secrecy because secrecy isolates you where you are most persuadable. Bring a trusted voice into your pattern. Name the hours when you are most vulnerable. Tell someone where you will be and what you will do when the wave of compulsion or despondency hits. The attack loses power when it is seen. It thrives when it is hidden in the respectable grey areas where everyone nods and no one challenges. Make it normal in your life to ask for prayer, counsel, and accountability not as emergencies but as rhythms. When your spirit is surrounded, your spirit is strengthened. Finally, accept that progress feels like resistance, not ease. When you lift a weight, the sign that you are getting stronger is not the absence of strain, but the presence of it. The same is true here. The day you stop feeling any tension may not be the day you became holy. It may be the day you surrendered without a fight. Measure growth by quicker recoveries after stumbles, by longer stretches of clarity between compromises, by deeper tenderness toward people you once used, by quieter confidence when fear performs its old theater. You will not become immune to attack, but you will become uninteresting prey. Your attentions will be too guarded, your frames too clear, your body too trained, your community too close, and your truths too planted. The flesh will still knock, it will simply stop finding you home. If this feels daunting, remember this. You are not asked to manufacture your own light. You are asked to remove what blocks it. When you unclutter your mornings, when you reclaim your focus, when you stop negotiating with appetites, when you reframe your choices in truth, when you invite others into your real story, grace rushes in like air into a vacuum. The spirit is not fragile, it is patient, steady, and willing to lead the whole of you into alignment. The attack is daily, yes, but so is the mercy. Every sunrise is a fresh enlistment. Every night is a gentle audit, and each small yes recalibrates your life toward what you were made for. If this first step into the anatomy of your daily battle helped you see the hidden patterns and sparked a desire to let your spirit lead, consider subscribing to the channel now so you don't miss the next deep practical chapters of this journey. Your support helps us bring more long-form teachings like this to you, and it keeps you connected to the tools and truths that strengthen your spirit every day. The second movement of this inner war begins where most people never think to look, not at the surface of your choices, but at the underground river that feeds them, your desires. Behavior is the visible branch. Desire is the root. If you pull at branches all day, they will grow back in subtle forms tomorrow. If you tend the roots, If you teach your loves what to love, you change the tree. The daily attack aims less at your willpower and more at your wanting. It tries to convince you that what is shallow is satisfying, that what is immediate is important, that what is popular is wise, that what is numbing is restful, that what is loud is true. When the flesh succeeds here, your will is left to fight a battle already lost in the imagination. This is why you can know the good and still not do it. Your imagination has been catechized by lesser gods. To win back the ground of desire, you must apprentice your wanting to truth, until the soul remembers the taste of what is real and rejects the counterfeits on sight. Desire is not your enemy. Disordered desire is. Hunger for joy, meaning, intimacy, belonging, contribution. These are not flaws to be suppressed, but energies to be re-aimed. The flesh does not invent new hungers. It misdirects holy ones. The hunger for joy becomes the chase for stimulation. The hunger for intimacy becomes the practice of using people. The hunger for belonging becomes the desperation of pleasing crowds. The hunger for meaning becomes the tyranny of achievement. The hunger for contribution becomes the idolatry of control. If you address only the surface expressions, you delete the app. You white-knuckle the habit, you take a break from the crowd. Without blessing and redirecting the legitimate hunger beneath them, you create a vacuum. And vacuums attract noise. The Spirit does not merely say no, it teaches you a better yes, until no is the natural consequence of a truer delight. Begin with what shapes your imagination. Your attention is the kiln where desire is fired. Repeated exposure marinates the heart. It is how something goes from foreign to familiar, from optional to obvious. The flesh understands this, and therefore smuggles scripts into your hours, mini-narratives about what a good life looks like, what success requires, what love permits, what failure means. These scripts don't arrive as lectures, they arrive as loops. A 5-second clip repeated 1,000 times carries more power over your desires than a 1,000-second lecture heard once. This is why an innocent pattern can eventually pull you with a force that surprises you. Your wanting has been rehearsed into a reflex. To disrupt this, you need a different rehearsal. You need to load your imagination with images of goodness that are as specific and repeatable as the counterfeits. It is not enough to say, "I want to be holy." Your imagination needs scenes, the quiet satisfaction after an honest day's work, the unhurried conversation at a table cleared of screens, the weightless feeling after keeping your word when no one was watching, the interior steadiness that follows refusing an indulgence that used to master you, the deep familiarity with sacred words that once felt distant and now feel like home. Give your imagination a gallery of these moments. Visit them, expand them, attach them to real places in your day. This chair at dawn, this walk without headphones, this hour with a book that outlives trends. This habit of writing one line of gratitude before the world demands a performance. The spirit thrives on specific altars. Desire is tutored by memory. The flesh keeps a highlight reel of counterfeit comforts. It edits out the cost. You remember the rush, not the crash. The sweetness, not the sickness. The thrill of getting away with it, not the erosion of integrity that followed. The Spirit answers this with a full-length film. It asks you to remember the end of the story, not the opening scene. What did it cost your sleep, your honesty, your relationships, your clarity? What did the shame do to your courage? How long did it take to rebuild the trust that the shortcut spent in an hour? Memory, rightly used, is medicine. Sit down with your past, not to condemn yourself, but to inoculate your future. Write the before and after of your worst patterns until the spell breaks. Then write the before and after of obedience until desire sees the better plot. The day you remember clearly is the day your wanting grows wise. Desire is also shaped by pace. The flesh is a sprinter, the spirit is a gardener. The flesh thrives on speed because speed hides emptiness. If the moment is always urgent, there is no time to ask whether it is worthy. You click, you consume, you react, you reply. Your wanting is dragged at a tempo that leaves no room for discernment. Slowness is not merely a personality trait, it is a spiritual strategy. When you slow a decision, you create space for the spirit to speak a sentence longer than the slogan. This is why practices that seem inefficient, silence, Sabbath, lingering conversation without a phone on the table, cooking a meal, walking a familiar route with an unfamiliar level of attention, heal desire. They reintroduce rhythm into a life the flesh keeps in a perpetual sprint. Rhythm is where the soul can hear itself again and remember what it is for. If you would retrain desire, renegotiate your rewards. The flesh has taught your nervous system to associate micro-rewards with micro-surrenders. The ping gives you a hit. The scroll gives you a hit. The treat gives you a hit. The gossip gives you a hit. The purchase gives you a hit. None of these are large enough to satisfy, but they are frequent enough to condition you. The Spirit invites you to attach reward to alignment, not indulgence. When you do the difficult, honest thing, mark it and celebrate it. When you keep a promise that cost you convenience, mark it and celebrate it. When you endure a wave of craving without bowing, mark it and celebrate it. This is not self-congratulation, it is reconditioning. You are teaching your body that peace is pleasurable, that integrity is energizing, that clarity feels better than compromise. Over time, your cravings will begin to anticipate the joy that follows obedience because you have paired them often enough. You can accelerate this with deliberate pairings. After a focused hour, step into sunlight. After a hard conversation told in love, share a meal. After returning a temptation to sender, take a long, deep breath and say out loud what you chose and why. When reward follows alignment, desire learns new math. Guard your inputs at the gate of envy, because envy corrodes desire from within by convincing you that goodness is scarce and someone else has already used up your portion. If envy is allowed to linger, holiness will taste like humiliation, because it means being content without what your comparison said you must have to matter. The flesh feeds envy by placing you inside other people's edited lives and then whispering, "This is normal, you are behind." The Spirit answers by resituating you in the providence of the present moment. You are not behind. You are being formed. The timetable of the soul is not the calendar of a brand. If you will keep showing up in small, sturdy ways, doing the work before you broadcast it, praying before you opine, building before you brand, you will find yourself living a life that envy cannot decode, because it is not built on visible advantages, but invisible roots. Desire calms down when it is no longer auditioning for a crowd. To heal desire, expose your loves to the presence that made them. When you bring your hunger for joy into the presence of the one who is joy, your counterfeit delights begin to lose their saturation and the true colors of reality return. This is why real prayer is not a transaction, but a transfusion. You enter saying one thing. You leave wanting differently. You don't come out of presence with a note that says, "Stop wanting." You come out with new want, deeper, quieter, more aligned with love that gives instead of takes. If prayer feels abstract to you, anchor it in place and pattern. Meet the presence in a consistent chair. Open your hands and unclench your jaw. Speak plainly. Read slowly. Listen as long as you spoke. Leave one request unasked and surrender it. Carry one name with you and bless them. Return tomorrow. The transformation of desire is less a lightning strike and more a slow dawn. Do not try to heal desire alone. The flesh isolates because isolation makes your private cravings feel universal and inevitable. When you say your wants out loud to a wise friend, you hear their shape and contest their truth. Community is the great clarifier of desire because people who love you are not impressed by your rationalizations. They are invested in your freedom. Make agreements with the mature. If I begin to speak bitterness as if it were discernment, tell me. If I begin to call avoidance wisdom, tell me. If I begin to name indulgence as self-care, tell me. If I begin to use sacred language to baptize my stubbornness, tell me. Give someone permission to interrupt your story mid-sentence, not because you need policing, but because you want the right things, and you know how clever the flesh can be with words. Your body must be brought into this reformation of desire because the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. If your strongest cravings always find you in the same posture, in the glow of a screen late at night, in the slump of a chair that tells your spine to surrender, in the kitchen corner that has become a confessional of comfort, change posture to change pattern. Stand up when the wave hits. Step outside and feel the air. Drink water slowly. Wash your face. Stretch until your breath deepens. Walk a flight of stairs. None of this is magic, it is embodied wisdom. The body too can learn that the moment of pressure is not a command, but a cue to practice. Over time, the craving that used to own you becomes a bell that calls you to prayer, to movement, to a truth sentence, to a text, to a friend, to a page in a journal, where you witness the old pull and write down the new pattern. This is how desire becomes liturgy. The same cue now leads to a different ritual, which establishes a different reward. Name and reorder your loves with language that sticks. The flesh loves vagueness because vagueness is malleable. You can bend it to bless whatever you already wanted. The spirit loves vows. A vow is not a prison, it is a path. Write in plain speech what you love and how you will love it in order. I love God above my comfort. Therefore, I will not worship my feelings. I love truth above my reputation. Therefore, I will confess quickly. I love people above my platform. Therefore, I will choose hidden service. I love integrity above ease. Therefore, I will keep promises that no one can see. I love my future above my flash. Therefore, I will build what lasts even when the room is empty. Return to these sentences. Say them when you are fresh, so that you can find them when you are fatigued. The attack becomes predictable when your loves are settled. It will still knock, but it will knock on a door guarded by vows. Understand that desire matures by grief as much as by delight. Part of why the flesh holds on is because you have not grieved what you must release. Old identities, old ambitions, old stories about who you were going to be. If you don't mourn them, you will keep bargaining with them. You will keep reaching back for a version of yourself that gratified you quickly, even though it cost you quietly. Let yourself lament what you are laying down. Name the pleasure it gave and the price it charged. Thank God for the lesson, even if you learned it the hard way. Bless the younger you who coped with what you knew then. Then bury it. Plant a new tree where the old one stood. Desire grows up in the soil of honest grief. It becomes clean of nostalgia's lies and willing to love what is good, even when it is not glamorous. Anchor your reordered desire in service. Nothing untangles self like serving another person with no return on investment. The flesh can mimic generosity when applause is near. It struggles when the act is hidden. Choose simple, regular acts that recenter your wanting around love that gives. Write a note to someone who cannot repay you. Bring a meal without posting about it. Give money where no one but your conscience will know. Visit someone who is lonely and be fully there. Volunteer in a place that bruises your pride and heals your eyesight. Acts like these cleanse desire because they teach the soul the pleasure of alignment with love's nature, to bless, to build, to protect, to lift. Soon, your cravings begin to anticipate this joy. Indulgence starts to feel thin compared to the thick pleasure of goodness done quietly. Return, again and again, to the simple practices that keep desire aligned. Read what outlives trends. Speak gratitude out loud. Keep Sabbath rest fiercely. Practice secrecy in righteousness. Fast from what has too loud a vote. Pray before you publish. Take walks without headphones. End your day with confession and thanks. Begin your day with consecration and truth. Call someone older and listen. Teach someone younger and serve. The attack is daily, so are these antidotes. You will not graduate from them, you will grow deeper within them until the person you once strained to be becomes the person you simply are. There will be setbacks. You will feel the old pull, and sometimes you will follow it farther than you meant to. Do not let the flesh convert a stumble into a story about your identity. Return quickly, repair directly, replace what broke. Learn the cue that caught you and rewire the loop. The difference between those who are mastered by the flesh and those who are led by the Spirit is not the absence of failure. It is the speed of repentance and the stubbornness of hope. Keep a short account with God and with people. Own what you did without decorating it. Receive mercy without arguing with it. Make restitution where you can. Move forward with humility. Desire heals in this rhythm because shame cannot abide in honesty and light. Over time, you will notice that your inner weather is changing. The storms still come, but the house creaks less. The windows hold, the rooms stay warm. You find yourself seeking the quiet instead of avoiding it. You notice beauty in smaller places. You choose the long road without resenting its length. You feel less tugged by the dangling keys of spectacle. You surprise yourself by choosing to end a day earlier rather than squeezing it empty. You speak more slowly, you hear more clearly, you laugh more easily, you forgive more quickly. These are not random improvements. They are the signatures of desire reordered. Your spirit is learning to lead, and your life is learning to follow. If this deep dive into rewiring desire at the root has helped you see how to turn daily attacks into daily alignments, I invite you to subscribe to the channel now so you won't miss the next chapters. Each new episode builds practical, long-form tools to strengthen your spirit and steady your steps, and your subscription helps us keep delivering them to you consistently. The next layer of this battle moves from desire to the narratives that carry it, the quiet sentences you repeat about God, yourself, people, time, failure, and hope. You do not live out of events. You live out of the meaning you assign to them. Two people can encounter the same delay, the same rejection, the same temptation, the same closed door. One reads it as abandonment, the other as formation. One reads it as evidence of unworthiness, the other as an invitation to deepen skill and patience. One reads it as proof that the flesh is too strong to resist, the other as proof that the spirit is strong enough to notice and say no sooner than last time. Your story is the lens, and the lens either clarifies reality or distorts it until you act against your own freedom. The flesh is a master narrator. It harvests fragments of truth and threads them into a script that feels familiar, inevitable, and self-fulfilling. I am my appetite. Discipline is deprivation. Holiness is for other personalities. Love is a transaction. My past is destiny. Prayer is performance. Silence is emptiness. Obedience is loss. Slowness is laziness. Boundaries are cruelty. Confession is exposure. Hope is naivete. With such a script, you can sit in a room full of grace and still feel starved. The Spirit, however, tells longer stories. It does not deny pain or minimize struggle. It refuses to crown them as king. It takes the same fragments and places them inside a bigger pattern. I am more than my appetite. Discipline is freedom. Holiness is my truest design. Love is a gift that multiplies in the giving. My past is material, not master. Prayer is union. Silence is presence. Obedience is alignment. Slowness is wisdom. Boundaries are stewardship. Confession is liberation. Hope is a stubborn agreement with ultimate reality. When you adopt the Spirit's narration, you begin to inhabit courage without theatrics, tenderness without weakness, clarity without severity, strength without hardness. Consider how the flesh uses time to narrate defeat before you begin. It whispers that you are late, that you should be further along by now, that if you had started earlier, you would not be struggling today, that the window is closing and the odds are shrinking. This is a paralyzing script because it transforms action into accusation. Every step you do take becomes a reminder of all the steps you didn't. The Spirit redeems time by relocating you inside today. It insists on the dignity of the present hour. Today is always the arena of obedience. The rest is either memory or imagination. When you return to today, you discover that the tasks that looked impossible when you tried to solve a lifetime in your head become possible when you simply do the next faithful thing. Call one person, write one page, pray one psalm, refuse one indulgence, take one walk. Apologize for one sentence, turn off one stream of noise, begin one practice and keep it. The flesh despises small beginnings because small beginnings expose its bluff. They prove that change is not a myth reserved for less complicated people, but a result reserved for those who begin. Listen also to how the flesh narrates identity. It loves labels because labels deliver certainty without growth. It does not matter whether the label flatters or shames. If it freezes you, the flesh can use it. I am the angry one. I am the anxious one. I am the distracted one. I am the exceptional one. I am the misunderstood one. I am the overlooked one. I am the responsible one who never needs help. I am the broken one who will always need rescue. The Spirit refuses to let any single moment become a master label. It acknowledges tendencies, wounds, gifts, and responsibilities, but it keeps identity anchored in something the hour cannot overturn. You are a person loved into being, called into growth, accountable for choices, capable of learning, invited into communion, and destined for maturity. With this frame, correction does not become condemnation, it becomes calibration. Praise does not become intoxication, it becomes encouragement. Failure does not become forecast, it becomes feedback. Success does not become salvation, it becomes stewardship. Watch how the flesh narrates relationship. It tells you that people are either tools, threats, or trophies. Tools to get what you want. Threats to what you have, trophies to validate your worth. That script poisons community. You will hide your need from people you could receive from because needing feels like losing. You will rehearse resentment against those whose pace or style exposes your insecurity. You will curate your circle to applause instead of wisdom and call it loyalty. The Spirit narrates relationship as covenant and calling. It reminds you that people are mysteries to be honored, not problems to be solved for your comfort. It teaches you to hold both truth and tenderness in your mouth at the same time. It grows in you a posture that asks different questions. What would love build here? What would truth protect here? What would hope risk here? What would humility learn here? What would patience endure here? Under this narration, you begin to find joy in the quiet work of presence. You notice the power of a listened-to fear, a patience that outlasts someone's defensiveness, a steady commitment that becomes a mirror in which a friend sees who they are when their shame insists otherwise. The flesh cannot fathom such slow victories. It counts only crowds and crises. The Spirit counts healings that look like conversations and resurrections that look like forgiven memories. Pay attention to how the flesh narrates failure. It collapses the distinction between what you did and who you are. It writes the scene as a verdict. You failed, therefore you are a failure. You lied, therefore you are a liar. You feared, therefore you are a coward. You indulged, therefore you are a hypocrite. You withdrew, therefore you are unreliable. This is surgical precision aimed at identity because identity dictates trajectory. If you accept the verdict, you will stop risking repentance and settle for performance. You will polish appearances instead of repairing foundations. The Spirit insists on the separating scalpel. You failed, therefore you are human. Now act like a child of God. You lied, therefore you must confess and repair. Now act like a lover of truth. You feared, therefore you must practice courage. Now act like someone whose security is not self-invented. You indulged, therefore you must fast and fortify. Now act like someone whose joy does not depend on numbing. You withdrew, therefore you must return and rebuild. Now act like someone who values covenant over comfort. This distinction is not denial. It is the only path by which growth remains possible without self-hatred or self-deception. And it is only possible when your story places grace at the center rather than at the margins. Examine how the flesh narrates holiness. It presents holiness as subtraction, less joy, less spontaneity, less humanness, when in fact holiness is concentration, the focusing of your life around what is most real so that your ordinary days become saturated with meaning. If your story about holiness is that it starves you, your body will revolt even if your mind agrees. But when holiness is narrated as alignment, my inner life and outer life telling the same truth, my loves arranged so that they bless rather than betray me, my habits reinforcing my deepest convictions, my boundaries protecting what I treasure, then obedience becomes not a series of isolated sacrifices, but a coherent way of being that yields increasing peace. Under that narrative, sacrifice is not the point. Love is. Discipline is not punishment. It is devotion. Limits are not cages. They are channels that give the river force. Notice the flesh's narration of prayer and scripture. It reduces them to tasks that prove piety or to techniques that produce outcomes. With that story, a distracted prayer becomes a failed prayer. A dry page becomes a wasted morning. A request not yet answered becomes proof that you are unheard or unworthy. The Spirit narrates prayer and scripture as places of presence and formation. You are not earning a gold star. You are learning a language. You are not bargaining with a reluctant giver. You are abiding with a generous Father. You are not checking a box. You are tuning an instrument. In this story, distraction becomes a cue to return without shame. Dryness becomes a chance to deepen roots by faith rather than feelings. Delay becomes a teacher of trust and timing, and unanswered prayers become seeds placed in a soil whose seasons you do not control. The point is not that you never wrestle. The point is that the wrestling itself becomes a way of staying close. Rewrite also the story you tell about your body. The flesh either idolizes or despises the body, idolizes it when it thinks appearance is identity, despises it when it thinks matter is inferior to spirit. Both narratives fracture you. The spirit honors the body as a partner and a place of worship. Your body can be trained to cooperate with your highest loves. It can be treated with kindness that refuses indulgence and refuses abuse. Sleep becomes stewardship, not weakness. Movement becomes gratitude, not vanity. Hunger becomes a teacher, not a tyrant. Boundaries around screens become honoring of nervous system and attention, not proof that you are behind. This narration unifies you. Your body becomes less a battlefield where you punish yourself for wanting, and more a sanctuary where you welcome the presence that orders your wanting. This narrative work is not accomplished by willpower alone. It requires practices that install the story into your reflexes. Speak truth out loud, because unheard truth rarely dislodges internal lies. Write counterscripts where the flesh has been persuasive. When I feel urgency, I will slow down. When I feel shame, I will confess and contact someone. When I feel envy, I will bless by name. When I feel isolation, I will walk toward community. When I feel numb, I will move my body. When I feel defensive, I will get curious. When I feel superiority, I will serve quietly. Attach these counterscripts to cues. The alarm that tells you to breathe and pray at noon. The sticky note on the mirror. The card in your wallet. The sentence you have memorized to say when temptation speaks its old lines. Over time, the new story migrates from your journal into your nervous system. You will still feel the old script trying to stage a comeback. It will arrive with familiar inflections. It will gesture toward old scenes where it seemed to keep you safe. But you will have rehearsed a reply long enough that your tongue will find it, even when your mind is foggy. That is not who I am. That is not how this ends. That is not what I need. That is not the only way. God who gets to narrate your worth. The flesh outsources it to crowds because crowds are efficient. A burst of approval can medicate a wound for a minute. But crowds are also fickle and shallow. They reward what is visible, simple, and sensational. If you let them tell your story, you will distort your life to remain legible to people who are not responsible for your soul. The Spirit invites you into a smaller courtroom with a wiser judge and truer witnesses. Let the people who know your worst and love you still be the ones who speak into your worth. Let the words that have outlasted empires, words about image-bearing and covenant and mercy and truth, sit on the bench. Let your practices be admissible evidence, the unseen integrity, the kept vows, the small obediences, the quiet generosities. Under this court's narration, you can endure misunderstanding without panic because your story does not hang on universal approval. It hangs on fidelity. Resist the flesh's apocalypse. It loves to predict catastrophe because fear shortens your horizon until any compromise looks wise if it promises short-term relief. Under fear's narration, you will treat people as enemies, treat patience as indulgence, treat prudence as paralysis, treat faithfulness as futility. The Spirit does not deny danger. It places danger inside providence. It requires you to decide who tells you the end of the story. If the end belongs to despair, then cynicism is intelligence. If the end belongs to love, then courage is realism. Choose your ending deliberately, because the ending you believe will shape the means you permit. If love will have the last word, then your present words must align with that grammar. You cannot seed bitterness and harvest reconciliation. You cannot seed manipulation and harvest trust. You cannot seed spectacle and harvest substance. Write your ending on the first page of your day. In this story, love wins. Therefore, I will practice its verbs now. Bless, forgive, protect, tell the truth, keep showing up. Let your new narration produce new math for progress. The flesh counts only dramatic leaps. If you cannot overhaul everything in a weekend, it declares that you have failed. The Spirit counts compounding faithfulness. 5 honest minutes practiced daily outperforms 5 heroic hours practiced occasionally. 1 small restitution made today, that unpaid debt reconciled, that apology offered, that habit reconfigured, does more to reshape your character than a month of vague resolutions. When your story values compounding, you keep sowing without needing immediate spectacle. You trust the seasonality of growth. Roots before fruit. Pruning before strength, quiet winters before vibrant springs. You stop demanding that every day be an exhibit of victory and allow many days to be laboratories of learning. Finally, make your life hospitable to the better story by curating what you repeatedly hear. Read authors whose sentences lay rails for your soul rather than pour gasoline on your adrenaline. Sing words that stretch your hope instead of shrink your courage. Memorize lines that can hold you at 3 in the morning when argument fails. Keep company with people who talk like builders instead of critics, who can diagnose honestly but would rather repair. Arrange your spaces so that your values surround you. The chair where you meet God, the quiet lamp that signals evening slowing, the table cleared of devices when faces are present, the stack of letters you write, the running shoes by the door, the page marked in a book that has outlasted fads. This is not aesthetic, it is liturgy. You are teaching your eyes, ears, tongue, hands, and feet the story they belong to so that when attack comes, and it will, you are living inside a narrative strong enough to absorb it without collapse. If this reframing of your inner story helped you recognize and rewrite the scripts that quietly steer your days, subscribe now so you stay with us for the next deep practical chapters. Your subscription anchors you to long-form guidance that strengthens your spirit and trains your habits, episode by episode. There comes a point in every long fight where inspiration is no longer enough, where insight, however luminous, cannot push the body across the line, where good intentions, carefully arranged like tools on a bench, must be picked up and used until calluses form. The flesh is patient at this point because it knows many spirits stop here. They confuse clarity with completion. They collect frameworks and mistake them for formation. What must happen now is the conversion of everything you have seen into rhythms that are heavier than moods. Reliable when motivation is missing, resilient when the weather shifts, and simple enough to practice on your worst day. This is the apprenticeship of your will, the quiet training of your reflexes, the long obedience that builds a life your future self can inhabit without apology. The flesh thrives in bursts and collapses. The spirit thrives in dailiness. The difference is not romance, but structure. When you choose structure, you choose to be carried by the rails you lay on days when your legs are weak. When you refuse structure, you consign yourself to the roller coaster of feelings and call it authenticity, while your life leaks away through the cracks of inconsistency. Begin with the smallest possible unit of transformation, one decision that cannot be negotiated with, practiced at the same time, in the same way, under the same conditions, until it ceases to be an argument and becomes an ordinary truth about who you are. The flesh will object that such smallness is beneath you, that your problems are too complex for simple repetitions, that your uniqueness exempts you from the mathematics of habit. Smile at this theater and begin anyway. Light the same lamp each morning and meet the presence before you meet the world. Read a paragraph slowly enough for it to speak back. Put your phone outside the room where you sleep and outside the room where you pray. Write one gratitude before breakfast. Walk 10 minutes without noise after lunch. Close your day with confession and naming 3 gifts you would have missed if hurry had won. These are not glamorous, which is why they work. They teach your soul that holiness is not a rare mood, but a practiced way. That love does not wait for inspiration. That courage is what conscientious repetition feels like from the inside. When you repeat such acts long enough, they stop competing for willpower. They begin to release it. You regain strength for the other fights because these no longer require argument. The body is not an obstacle to spiritual formation, but the staging ground where formation becomes visible. The flesh either pampers or punishes it. Both approaches keep you fragmented and reactive. The spirit reconciles you to your body by giving it a job description. Your body will be asked to sit still when you pray, even when your nerves itch for motion, to move when you are numb, even when your mind begs for another hour of scrolling, to rest on schedule when your pride tries to win an imaginary productivity contest, to fast from what shouts too loudly, to feast with gratitude when the feast is given, to keep its posture at a table, to signal respect for the person in front of you. To lift something heavy with regularity so that you remember strain is not an emergency but a teacher. In time, your muscles learn the grammar your spirit is speaking. We do hard things calmly. We embrace limits without self-hatred. We return to presence when distraction calls. We refuse to be commanded by spikes of craving or troughs of boredom. This is not about appearance. It is about integrity, the integration of inner and outer, so that your confession and your calendar tell the same truth. Attacks rarely succeed on the battlefield of conviction when you have slept well, eaten sanely, moved your body, and curated your inputs. The flesh prefers to catch you after 3 nights of compromise, 6 hours of jittery screens, and a day of half-finished tasks, because you scattered your attention across 5 priorities. Therefore, make a strategy of protecting your baselines. Choose a bedtime and defend it like a vow, even if the unfinished seduces you. Decide which hours your devices become ineligible to speak into your mind, and treat those hours as sacred. Determine the 3 tasks that actually move your calling forward, and put them before everything that merely signals busy importance. Schedule replenishment, like responsibility, because without replenishment, you will keep paying tomorrow with principle for what you overspent today with pride. Such ordinary guardrails do not feel spiritual until you realize how many of your collapses were simply the invoice of neglected basics. The spirit is not embarrassed to be practical. It is too wise to surrender high ground to preventable depletion. Accountability is the architecture that turns private aspiration into public reliability. The flesh hates witnesses. It insists you are safest when no one knows your plan, your numbers, your patterns, your failures, your strengths. In isolation, you can keep your mythology intact, either saint or victim, hero or cautionary tale. In community, you become accurate, and accuracy is the seedbed of growth. Find 2 or 3 who prefer your freedom to your approval, and ask them to hold specific parts of your life to light. Show them your schedule and your spending, your media diet and your sleep, the draft you are afraid to publish, and the apology you are afraid to make, the tally of days you have practiced a needed habit, and the tally of days you have avoided a corrosive one. Let them ask you whether your rhetoric is outrunning your repentance, whether your bitterness is masquerading as discernment, whether your tiredness has become an excuse for unkindness. This is not surveillance, it is covenant. You are entrusting your future to people who will not let the present lie to you. The mind must be taught to change channels on command. Temptation often arrives as a loop. So does despair. So does self-accusation. If you let the loop keep the only microphone, your body will believe the story and act accordingly. Build an interrupt protocol that is simple enough to practice at the first hint of spiral. Stand, say the truth sentence out loud, take 5 slow breaths that expand the lower ribs, name 5 things you can see and 5 things you can feel. Recite a line you have memorized that has carried saints through nights worse than yours. Perform 1 act of blessing that is incompatible with the indulgence calling your name. The point is not to win a debate against the loop, but to replace it with a liturgy. Your brain will comply with the most rehearsed pattern available. Make sure the rehearsed pattern belongs to the story you have chosen. You will need protocols for the predictable weak hours, late evenings when fatigue and loneliness co-sign bad ideas, mid-afternoons when discouragement dresses as efficiency and sends you shopping for a different calling, post-criticism windows when shame wants to build a bunker or pick a fight, travel days when disorientation lowers thresholds, victories when you feel invincible and therefore sloppy. Write scripts for these hours before you are in them. Decide where your phone sleeps and where your body does. Decide what you read when you cannot pray and who you text when you do not trust yourself to interpret the moment. Decide the route you will walk and the place you will sit, the drink you will choose and the screens you will refuse, the sentence you will speak when someone praises you and the one you will speak when someone misunderstands you. Predetermine restitutions so that when you sin, you already know the path to repair. Predetermine generosity so that when you prosper, you already know where the surplus goes. Predetermine exits so that when a room is poisoning your discernment, you already know how to leave without fanfare. The flesh is agile. Match it with pre-commitment sturdy enough to remove improvisation from moments that cannot bear it. Work must be re-sanctified because sloppiness in vocation bleeds into sloppiness in virtue. The flesh treats work either as an idol that devours the rest of your life or as a necessary evil to be minimized and gamed. Both approaches deform you. The Spirit treats work as service, an altar where you offer competence, honesty, punctuality, initiative, collaboration, problem-solving, the humility to learn, the courage to confront, The joy of building something that might bless people you will never meet. Choose craftsmanship in small things. The uncluttered email that respects a reader's time. The extra check that prevents someone else from carrying your avoidable error. The boundary that protects deep work from being dismantled by constant pinging. The ordinary courtesy that lubricates teams. Practice finishing. Practice beginning again. Practice letting your yes be reliable and your no be clear. Over time, the integrity muscle you train at a desk will help you refuse compromise in the dark, and the patience you learn with a stubborn project will help you persevere with a stubborn habit. Vocation is a gym for virtue if you let it be. Grief and joy must be braided into your discipline, or it will harden into performative austerity. The flesh caricatures the spiritual life as a grim march. Then, when you grow weary, it entices you with counterfeit festivals. The spirit throws better feasts. Mark your calendar with restorations that are clean, music that opens windows in your chest, meals shared slowly with people who make you honest and make you laugh, walks in places that remind you you are a creature among wonders, stories that enlarge your compassion instead of shrinking your attention span. Give thanks aloud at tables. Bless those who fed you. Learn your seasons of sorrow and make space for them without shame. Cry when you need to. Write the names you miss. Light a candle for what cannot be fixed yet. Such practices rinse your soul so that your discipline does not turn into denial and your fasting does not curdle into pride. Joy keeps you generous. Grief keeps you tender. Together they keep you human in a way the flesh cannot counterfeit. You will need a doctrine of setbacks that does not sabotage momentum. The flesh weaponizes perfectionism on the front end so you never begin, and fatalism on the back end so you never return. Refuse both. Design your system assuming missed days. Build catch-up rules that are humane. Never miss twice. If you miss twice, restart with half the load. If you fall behind on a reading plan, do today's reading today and leave the backlog to God. If you break a fast, end it cleanly and schedule the next one. If you lose your temper, apologize within the hour and repair what can be repaired that day. Keep visual tallies of streaks not to worship them, but to encourage your eyes. Let the graph go down sometimes. Graphs that only go up are lies. The truth is, you are being remade by a love more patient than your self-reproach and more relentless than your self-sabotage. Agree with that love. Act like it is real by returning quickly and quietly, without theatrical vows that impress no one and change nothing. Finally, hold a long horizon. The flesh bargains in hours and days. The spirit thinks in years and generations. It asks you to consider the person you could become if you simply did not quit the basics for a decade. It asks you to imagine the home culture you could create if you built dinner tables where phones sleep in another room and confessions are welcomed without theater. If you practice Sabbath with such consistency that your children and your friends know what a rested human looks like. If you apologized without poison, if you handled money with both prudence and open-handedness, if you told the truth kindly enough that people began to seek you when they were tangled. A decade of such practices becomes a life that outlasts moods. The attack will keep visiting, sometimes with new costumes, sometimes with old scripts, but it will find a different address. A person organized around what cannot be purchased, a home with strong rituals of presence, a body that does not panic when craving shouts, a calendar that tells the truth about loves, a community that tells the truth about you without shrinking its affection. Do not wait to feel ready. Ready is often a disguise for fear. Begin where you stand with what you have, and let repetition and repentance do their quiet work. Stack one faithful hour on another until scaffolding rises around your life and protects what is being built inside. This scaffolding will not impress the crowds. Crowds are rarely impressed by what endures until the storm comes and the flimsy shrines of spectacle fall. But you will know. You will feel the steadiness that comes from being the same person on Tuesday that you were on Sunday, from making the same choice on the road that you made in the chair, from being able to look those you love in the eye without editing your memory first. This is the freedom you were made for, the freedom to be one person, led by one spirit, living one story, offering one life without shadow deals. If these concrete rhythms and protocols are helping you turn insight into sturdy daily practice, subscribe now so you don't miss the final chapter of this series and the long-form guides that follow. Your subscription keeps this work going and keeps you supplied with deep, practical tools to let your spirit lead every day. The final movement of this long interior campaign is not about winning once. It is about staying awake, staying soft, and staying steady for the length of your life. The flesh will keep testing the doors even when you have strengthened the locks. It will try to re-enter by nostalgia, by entitlement, by boredom, by success, as much as by struggle. The Spirit's answer is not paranoia, but practiced vigilance joined to practiced mercy. Vigilance without mercy becomes suspicion and brittleness. Mercy without vigilance becomes permissiveness and drift. What you need now is a way of living that keeps your edges sharp and your heart warm, that allows you to fight without becoming hard, to feel deeply without being drowned, to lead yourself without becoming your own tyrant, to love people without letting their storms define your weather. This is the perseverance of a soul that has learned how to receive life from its source and then pour it out cleanly into the world, day after ordinary day. Begin with the humility that keeps you teachable when you are finally competent. Early in the journey, ignorance makes us open. We know we do not know. Later, competence makes us closed. We think we do not need. The flesh exploits this by flattering you with the illusion of arrival. It will point to your progress and whisper that you have outgrown basic protections, that secret shortcuts now apply to you because you are an exception, that the rules are for beginners and you, of course, are beyond them. Humility dismantles this trap, not by groveling, but by remembering proportion. For every skill you have gained, there are 1,000 you have not. For every victory, there are vulnerabilities simply waiting for fatigue to lower your guard. For every day you feel wise, there are days you will feel like a beginner again, and that is good for your soul. Keep a learner's posture after your promotions. Ask more questions, especially when people expect you to answer. Sit in rooms where you are not the most impressive person. Expose your drafts to critique before they become public claims. Read across disciplines to keep your imagination fertile and your dogmas honest. Humility is the traveling companion that makes longevity possible, because it keeps you curious where pride would make you brittle. Refuse to rehearse resentment. The longer you live, the more reasons you will accumulate to harden. Betrayals that surprised you, disappointments that aged you, misunderstandings that cost you, betrayals that used your sincerity as leverage. The flesh loves to salt these wounds until your tenderness stings and you flinch at every touch. Resentment feels like armor, but it is actually a cage. It preserves your injury, but imprisons your joy. The way out is not theological slogans, but practices that metabolize pain into wisdom without poisoning the well. Name the harm precisely, so you do not have to relive it obsessively. Set boundaries that stop the bleeding. Forgiveness is not the absence of fences. Bless the person at a distance when proximity would corrode both of you. Learn what the experience taught you about your own blind spots, how you ignored early signals because you wanted a certain story, how your ego made you vulnerable to flattery, how your silence participated in a dynamic you later resented. Make reparation where you can, even when the other cannot or will not. Then, deliberately cultivate joy again in places that person or season never touched. Beauty, craft, presence, quiet service. When resentment tries to return with its tired script, let your life contradict it. There is more good ahead than harm behind, and I will not carry poison into clean rooms. Do not outsource your conscience to your tribe. As years pass, you will likely find yourself nested inside communities, professional, spiritual, ideological, that reward loyalty and group narratives. There is tremendous good here. We are not meant to be alone, but there is also a pressure that can quietly train you to suspend your own discernment whenever the group speaks. The flesh will use this to lure you into hypocrisy with the most respectable excuses: unity, brand integrity, team morale, institutional preservation. The Spirit asks you to be loyal at a deeper level, to truth that outlives any group's current comfort. When your people are right, rejoice and amplify. When your people are wrong, love them enough to tell the truth early, kindly, and clearly. Refuse the bait that says your only choices are silence or scorched earth. There is a third way: private courage, patient persuasion, transparent ownership of your own errors, a willingness to accept costs quietly. Your soul was not built to live forever on borrowed convictions. Keep your conscience awake, and your community, if it is healthy, will in time be safer because you stayed brave. Make peace with obscurity, and keep doing excellent work anyway. There will be seasons when your name is called and rooms open. There will be seasons when you are hidden, ignored, or misread. The flesh knows how to weaponize both: applause to intoxicate you, obscurity to embitter you. The Spirit trains you to become independent of both, without becoming indifferent. Excellence is devotion, not performance. Do the unseen work as if the world is watching, because God is, and because the work itself shapes you into someone congruent. Sweep the floor your name will never be attached to with as much care as the page that will be quoted. Prepare the meeting no one will notice with as much diligence as the presentation that will trend. Finish the project that blesses 30 with the same integrity you would bring to one that blesses 30,000. When the spotlight comes, it will not distort you as easily because you did not practice for it. You practiced for love. When obscurity returns, it will not deform you as easily because you did not measure your worth by visibility but by fidelity. Turn success into stewardship fast. Wins create momentum, and momentum can feel like invincibility. If you do not submit success to scrutiny, it will begin to write your liturgy. Work longer, sleep later, say yes more, listen less. Assume the last method will always apply to the next challenge. Build faster than your character can carry. Gather followers faster than your soul can bless. Interrupt this drift with deliberate conversions of success into service. Ask, who can be lifted by this gain? What systems keep us honest as we scale? Which practices protected our integrity when we were small and must be preserved at cost now that we are big? Who gets to tell me no, especially when the numbers are shouting yes? Where is the margin that ensures we do not spend tomorrow's virtue on today's victory? The flesh will congratulate you into collapse. The Spirit will consecrate your wins into a wider blessing. Guard the slow health of your relationships as the irreplaceable wealth they are. The attack will try to wedge itself into the tiny cracks of neglect, unreturned messages because you are so busy, distracted dinners because your mind is still on that thing, invisible scorekeeping because I did more last week, assumptions hardened into narratives because we haven't had time to clarify. Busyness is often grief in disguise, the grief of letting go of omnipresence, of admitting you cannot be endlessly available and excellent at the same time, of accepting that someone will be disappointed when you practice sanity. Choose who you will disappoint and do it on purpose. Disappoint the endless feed. Disappoint the vague audience in your head. Do not disappoint your spouse, your child, your friend, your own soul by practicing absence where presence is required. Presence is the currency of love. Put it where the return is eternal. Keep Sabbath like your life depends on it, because it does. Sabbaths are not rewards for efficiency. They are rebellions against Pharaoh, ancient and modern. When you stop, the flesh will panic and pile arguments at your door. You will fall behind. They will forget you. This tiny fire will die without your breath. You do not deserve rest until you have finished this, or proved that. Let those lies knock. Go to sleep anyway. Sit with people who know you. Walk slowly. Pray without a stopwatch. Read words that do not monetize your attention. Eat food that took time to prepare. Laugh without taking a photo to prove it happened. The gift of Sabbath is not only rest, it is perspective. In ceasing, you remember that the world is held together by hands stronger than yours, and that your significance is measured in truth and love, not in constant motion. A rested soul sins less because it does not grasp as much. Practice courageous truth-telling without cruelty. The longer you walk, the more often you will be asked to speak into tangled situations, your own or others. The flesh, uncomfortable with the tension, will urge you toward two ditches: sentimental avoidance that baptizes cowardice as kindness, or scorched earth honesty that baptizes aggression as integrity. The Spirit's way is both braver and gentler. Tell the truth early, specifically and calmly. Use nouns, not vague atmospheres. Own your part without hedging. Offer concrete steps, not theatrical outrage. Ask for accountability you can actually measure. Invite feedback that can actually shape you. When you must confront, do it face to face if possible. Texts grow teeth and emails grow horns. When you must apologize, drop the word if and the word but. When you must draw a line, draw it cleanly and then refuse to gossip about it. Boundaries are for protection, not performance. Over time, this way of truth becomes a culture around you. People breathe easier because games are fewer. Cultivate holy imagination for the long problems. Some problems will not bend under a sprint of effort. There will be addictions that take years to uproot. Family patterns that take decades to reweave, systems at work that take patient coalition, building to reform, injustices in your city that require persistent hope beyond election cycles or trending days. The flesh, allergic to duration, will either minimize these problems so you can feel effective in the short term, or magnify them into doom so you can feel justified in quitting. Holy imagination holds size and slowness together. It asks, what small lever can I press today in the direction of wholeness? What alliance can I form? What truth can I speak? What skill can I learn? What policy can I draft? What habit can I stack? What prayer can I repeat? What check can I write? What neighbor can I invite? What mentor can I consult? Then it does that one thing without demanding that today feel like a finale. In time, such imagination becomes realism of the highest order because it aligns with how love changes the world. Seed by seed, brick by brick, person by person. Let gratitude remain your climate, not an occasional event. Gratitude is not denial of difficulty. It is the refusal to allow difficulty to become the only lens. It protects your discernment because a thankless mind sees only scarcity and threat, and decisions made under that sky are cramped, fearful, defensive. Practice gratitude with language that weighs enough to tip your internal scales. Not just, I'm grateful, but I thank you for the way you stayed when leaving would have cost less. I thank God for the discipline that now feels like freedom. I thank you, body, for carrying me through a long day I didn't think I could finish. I thank you, friend, for the truth you told me when I was not pleasant to tell. Write 3 lines at night. Say 1 line before meals. Speak 1 line when you catch yourself spiraling. Gratitude is a weapon. It cuts the ropes that anxiety uses to tie your attention in knots. Receive joy without suspicion. Many earnest souls, once bruised by indulgence, begin to guard themselves against joy as if joy were the gateway drug to compromise. But joy is not the enemy of holiness. It is its festival. If you refuse joy when it is offered, you will be more vulnerable to its counterfeits when you are exhausted. Learn to dance inside your own skin in ways that do not mortgage tomorrow. Sing loud enough to dislodge the day's dust. Tell people you love them with specificity that makes them smile and weep in the same breath. Celebrate small victories as if heaven itself were nodding, because it is. If all your disciplines end in grimness, you did not follow them far enough. There is gladness on the other side of restraint, and it is clean. Stand watch over your thresholds, those moments where one kind of time turns into another, one kind of place into another, one kind of role into another. Morning to work, work to home, solitude to community, online to embodied presence, private thought to public speech. The flesh loves thresholds because people sleep through them. You carry residue from the last room into the next and wonder why the next is clouded before you begin. Build small threshold rites. A 3-breath pause when you touch the doorknob before entering your home. A sentence of intention whispered before opening the meeting link. A moment of silence before you press publish. A quick walk around the block before you enter a difficult conversation. A hand on the shoulder of a child before you discipline. A glance at a sticky note that says, "I am here to bless," before you step into a room of strangers. Thresholds consecrated are rooms redeemed. Tend to wonder. Wonder is not childishness. It is sanity. It reminds you that you are a creature inside a creation, not an algorithm inside a machine. Stare long at trees old enough to have watched your grandparents fall in love. Learn the names of constellations so your night walks are conversations with ancient fires. Follow one bird's song across a morning and notice how your chest loosens. Grow something you cannot rush. Bake bread to remember that chemistry and patience conspire toward goodness. Wonder softens your will without weakening it. It gives you reasons to fight that are not fueled by rage, but by reverence. People who have forgotten wonder become efficient and empty. People who keep wonder become sturdy and kind. Do not confuse secrecy with privacy. Secrecy hides rot. Privacy protects intimacy. The flesh likes to call secrecy privacy so that truth dies in the dark. If a habit cannot survive the light of one trusted witness, it cannot survive your long obedience. Set it down. If a relationship must be hidden, it is already telling you the quality of fruit it will bear. Step back. If a purchase cannot be explained to your future self without puffed-up narratives, wait. Conversely, protect real privacy fiercely. Those unrecorded conversations where hearts are made safe, those quiet mornings where no one gets to intrude, those places in your home and soul where you refuse to perform. Private wells keep public rivers clean. As the years stack, practice blessing those behind you and honoring those ahead. The flesh runs an insecure economy. It envies the young for their speed and the elders for their wisdom, then despises both in turn. The spirit runs a generous one. It mentors without condescension and seeks counsel without vanity. Take a younger hand and say, "Here are the mistakes I made. Avoid them. Here are the practices that sustain me. Try them. Here is my phone number. Use it." Take an elder's hand and say, "I need your eyes on this. I trust your weathered sentences more than my trending ones." Communities become strong when wisdom flows both ways. You will be both student and teacher many times. Receive both roles with gratitude. Keep a short list of non-negotiables and let everything else be flexible. The attack will try to exhaust you by framing every preference as a principle and every tradition as a commandment. Name the few hills worth dying on, the sanctity of truth, the dignity of persons, the centrality of love, the stewardship of your vows, the protection of your attention, the integrity of your word, and then let the rest be negotiable. Let style, taste, pace, tools, tactics, and timelines adapt to seasons. Rigidity masquerading as righteousness breaks people. Clarity about essentials joined to flexibility about the rest makes you resilient and kind. Lastly, return to first love often. Your endurance is not powered by stoic grit alone. It is powered by affection renewed. When affection fades, discipline sours. When affection is rekindled, the same disciplines taste like privilege. Sit again, where you first realized you were seen and not despised, called and not coerced, liberated and not shamed. Read the lines that first attached your heart to the truth. Remember the person whose quiet holiness first made you hungry for more than survival. Visit the place where you promised yourself and God that you would not waste your life on small things. Do this not as nostalgia, but as renewal. Love is the only fire that can keep you warm without burning you out. You are not being asked to be extraordinary. You are being invited to be faithful. Extraordinary is a story about you. Faithful is a story about love. Extraordinary burns bright and then disappears. Faithful keeps showing up until deserts bloom. Extraordinary needs constant audience. Faithful becomes a shelter for others. By now, you have seen the enemy's patterns and your own, and you have seen the Spirit's patience and power. You know how quickly you wander and how quietly grace returns you. You know the tricks that once mastered you and the practices that now strengthen you. You know the phrases that knock you off center and the sentences that bring you home. Live what you know. Add to it slowly. Teach it without theatrics. And when you forget, return without drama. The inner conflict will not vanish. It will change tone. It will become less a cacophony and more a set of occasional knocks you recognize by sound. You will answer them with practiced sentences and practiced steps. You will bless and build while others posture and panic. You will choose the room where love is required over the room where applause is guaranteed. You will carry a quiet weather with you that unsettles the frantic and steadies the fearful. You will be a person who, without fanfare, makes it easier for other people to choose the narrow road because you made it look like what it is, not a corridor of deprivation but a path of deep freedom. If this final chapter helped you settle into a long, steady way of living, where your spirit leads day after day, subscribe now so you journey with us through future series that keep building practical strength for your soul. Your subscription ensures you won't miss the next deep, long-form teachings designed to keep you awake, soft, and steady in a world that needs exactly that.